Right now, we welcome Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. He is, by the way, a member of the Budget Committee. And Senator, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity. Good morning.
Good morning. You know, this is a big move and something a lot of people are watching very closely. I just want to ask you first up, watching executive orders first being used by President Obama and now by President Trump, they have certainly ratcheted up over time. Do you think what the president did was legal with the executive orders?
Well, I think what he did is legal, and that's been demonstrated by the fact that his predecessor did do it so regularly, and that the Supreme Court is, particularly as it relates to the deferral of enforcement actions, the Supreme Court has held up that authority that President Obama instituted when he was president. So I think that's pretty clear. I think from a political standpoint, he certainly snared Democrats in their own trap and has flipped the leverage, which I think was probably as important as anything.
Yeah, politically, it was certainly a smart move. But I do come back to this question of what it means for Congress and for the Senate to have so many executive orders, again, through both President Obama and President Trump, that seem to weaken the powers of Congress. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's concerning because obviously our founders created three co-equal branches with the emphasis on co-equal for a reason, and they made big things difficult to do for a reason. But this drift toward more executive orders and more power for the executive branch, it's sort of natural anyway, because the executive branch, while it's co-equal, is made up of one policymaker. So there's an efficiency there. And that efficiency plays itself out in situations like this, a crisis, an emergency, where the emergency powers of the president, along with deferral of enforcement actions, gives him a great deal of unilateral power and authority. But at the end of the day, even that is limited, as we've seen in these four executive orders. While they're very targeted and I think very appropriate, they sort of reward the entire economic spectrum, but in a minimal way. To do the really big things, you need to do like appropriate and tax. That still requires Congress. But as we get through this, I do think we have to take a hard look at those three co-equal branches, the power, particularly the Article I powers of Congress, and try to restore some of that.
So let's get to where we stand right now when it comes to the stimulus and this relief plan. Do you think that we need a broader agreement, and does this change of the political winds make it more or less likely that there is an agreement between the two parties?
Yeah, it's a great point, because as I mentioned up front, that the political leverage has really flipped here. For the last couple of months, Speaker Pelosi has been rather proud of being able to proclaim that I have all the leverage. Of course, she has the proxy of every Democrat in Congress, both the House and the Senate, and that that is what kept us from really coming up with any type of a bipartisan deal. That, along with the fact that that Republican senators couldn't agree on any one particular plan. But all of that was flipped. So I think it makes it more likely. I think that now that the Democrats can sort of fume about what the president's done, but they can't really argue with the policies behind it, because they're mostly policies that they supported and wanted in a package. Perhaps it brings them back to the table. The question, though, I think, Becky, is it even all that necessary? Because for many of us, we've been concerned, us being Republican senators, we've been concerned about the fact we've already spent $3 trillion taxpayer dollars, almost half of which is still unspent, and certainly the impacts of it are unknown. So, some people, I think, are going to look and go, oh my gosh, we've got to get to the negotiating table and fix this. And others are going to be looking at going, there's no longer a need to get back to the negotiating table because the president has largely fixed it.
Yeah, that's kind of my point with this. I mean, it sounds like you're not necessarily feeling that there's a real rush to get back to negotiation, and maybe what the president's done has taken care of the bulk of what you were concerned about anyway.
Well, I think he has, particularly with the unemployment insurance, making it a more modest, fully funding it largely through two federal programs, giving states and governors the opportunity to opt in or opt out. And then, of course, with the deferral of payroll taxes. As a policy matter, we can have an argument all day long, but for the short term, what he's done is given every working employee, every working man and woman in America that make under $100,000 a 7.5% payroll increase. So, he's taking care of both unemployment and those that are employed, which I think is something that we were missing in the CARES Act that created too much of a disincentive for people to not work. And I think he's sort of equalized that, while also obviously providing this much needed relief for renters and for people with large student loan debt. It allows them to either pay it off at 0% or defer it till later, depending on their circumstance. And so there's certainly more that can be done, particularly as it relates to getting kids back to school safely and as it relates to the disease itself. While there's still some funds available and the CDC and the other healthcare organizations continue to work, we need to make sure that our local hospitals and healthcare providers also are properly equipped for, for the task at hand.